Okay, so here we are, back for part 2 of my evening at the movies with Independence Day Resurgance. Man, what a letdown. And I wasn't, as I said before, I wasn't going in expecting that much. I pretty much could tell from the trailers this was gonna suck. It didn't suck in any major way, in any like really offensive way, you know. Kind of like, again, I'm trying to remember which film I said it. I said it on one of them. I think it was Jungle Book, where I said it didn't even have the courtesy to be offensively bad. It was just kind of there, and that's this film. It was just kind of there. There was nothing in it that was god awful, but everything, all the charm, all the goodwill, all the things that made the original Independence Day work, this film completely passed by. Now, to be fair, let's be honest here, and I'm going to admit my own bias. The original Independence Day is one of my all-time favorite movies. I mean, it's right up there with Jurassic Park. It's one of the movies that redefined summer blockbusters and kind of defined my youth, my high school years. It was one of those movies. It was just, and it's one, I can still watch it today and love everything about it. And people have complained about certain things. Oh, the virus hooked up to how can a 90s laptop hook up to an alien? Shut up. It made sense within the world it created. This movie, so again, it's not offensively bad. It doesn't do anything to kind of tarnish the original. I guess let me start with this. Let me start with kind of what's a good thing about this. This movie at least had the common courtesy to try to be different from the original. It does not have the same stock plot. The aliens' means of destruction is a lot different. The final solution is a lot different. It's not one of these movies like Jurassic World, which spent all of its time either trying to imitate the original or showing you how much smarter it was than the original. This movie tried to be its own thing and continue the story, and I think in that I have to give them credit. I've got to give them a lot of credit for that. It would have been really easy just to do like Jurassic World did and, basically, try to kiss up to the original for 2 hours. So that's the only real thing I can say in its favor. Other than that, it's just dull. Well, let's talk about some of the things that don't work and compare it to the original, because I think in this instance I can't help but compare it to the original. Number one, the characters. The original had a large cast and had it in that vein of kind of the classic disaster movies like The Towering Inferno or The Poseidon Adventure, where it had a large cast, all of them caricatures, but flushed out caricatures, things that made them not seem like they were cardboard cutouts. These characters are just cardboard cutouts, and they're not likable cardboard cutouts. Liam Hemsworth is your typical I don't need to listen to no rules kind of fighter pilot who's got a chip on his shoulder. The young man who plays Will Smith's now adult son is the typical by the book, I gotta live up to my daddy soldier. They had the comic sidekick who somehow was in the army despite being a complete idiot. All the new characters are not likable or enjoyable, and all the old characters are just tired and annoying. Jeff Goldblum did not annoy me in Jurassic Park or Independence Day like he annoyed some people. He annoyed me in this film. So there's that. So first of all, the characters suck. So there's nobody there to follow, and that's what made the original great, is not just the special effects, which we'll talk about in a second, but that you wanted to follow these characters through their story, and you cared when one of them died. You knew they weren't all going to make it out, but you cared when one of them died. You rooted for them. So there's that. The other thing, and I talked about this a little bit in the Ghostbusters review, and I'll talk about it here because it's important. The special effects. The special effects are a real problem in this film. And here is why. Once again, the original Independence Day was groundbreaking. And like Jurassic Park, it was one of the last movies to not just use computer animation. Computer animation was in its infancy, and they were just starting to realize what it could do. Now, it had some outstanding computer animation in that film, but it also used practical effects. It used puppets. It used miniatures. It, like the original Jurassic Park, understood, mainly through necessity, that a computer is a useful tool, but it's not the only tool in the toolbox. And I think part of the reason both the original Jurassic Park and the original Independence Day still stand up is because their use of all these different special effects makes the film feel more tangible. Does that make sense? When the buildings are blown up in Independence Day, because they're actually blowing up models, it feels like actual destruction. When they're tossing around cars and stuff, a lot of times they were tossing around real cars. The aliens, yeah, they can't move as fluidly as the CGI, but because they were puppets, one, they were in the room with the actors, and two, they had weight to them. They had limited movement like a real creature does. And all of this helps make those movies feel more real. It helps you take this extreme concept and boil it down and make it feel tangible to you. This film did the exact thing I kind of complained about Ghostbusters, and the same thing I bitch about Jurassic World doing. It went, computers, click, 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 special effects. The destruction doesn't have the same weight to it because nothing has weight. It's one thing I always complain about computer animation. Nothing feels like it weighs anything. Things just fly up and fly down. You know, only time I've ever seen it work really well was Pacific Rim. The monsters and the robots in that felt like they weighed tons, like they're supposed to. Nothing had any weight. It all looked like screensavers, you know. And as such, there was no emotional connection to any of the destruction that it caused. You couldn't get into this movie, and that's the big problem with it. The original Independence Day is so beloved and so awesome because it wraps you up in it. It is a feel-good movie, and you feel good watching it because you're invested in it. There's no investment in this movie. None. Everything is so far at a distance because of the computer animation, because of the lack of enjoyable characters, all of it. So you can't get into it, you can't enjoy it. What irks me even more, and I heard the movie critic Movie Bob said this in his review of Independence Day, and I'm going to kind of go one better. He said that there's a better movie hidden in this. And again, the thing that pissed me off is that he's right, but actually there are two better movies in the margins there. One of the new characters is an African warlord that they talk about. These African nation, apparently during the original invasion, one of the ships actually landed and sent out ground troops, and the people of this country banded together and fought like a ground war with them for 10 years. And the critic Movie Bob said this, and I agree with him, that would have been an awesome movie. I would have loved to have seen that. And the minute they mention it, you see kind of the characters and all that, and they go there and they see the ship that from the original film that actually landed. You're like, holy crap! That would have been an awesome movie. Why aren't I watching that? So there's that. And there's another subplot, and I think people would disagree with me on this one, of these kids who lose their parents and are on their own, and not one of them looks to be older than 15. And they find Judd Hirsch, and he's with them. And as I'm watching the kids, normally kids in these kind of movies annoy you, but I'm watching them going, I kind of want to know that story, because that would have been interesting to see. Because the original Independence Day, we have kind of that third-person omniscient viewer thing, where we're following the main story through the invasion, through the attacks, and through the ultimate solution. But what must it have been like for the average survivor? The person who wasn't around for us and just watching it all kind of on the periphery. One of the things I really loved about the movie Cloverfield is that's what it gives you. It gives you kind of that every man, or every woman, pardon me, feel of what it would be like to be at, pardon the pun, but to be at ground zero for one of these, where you don't have all the answers, where you don't know what's going on, all you're trying to do is survive. And I thought that would have been a cool movie, just to see those kids kind of go through this destruction, and maybe they're running from aliens, and they kind of like the book and the radio show of War of the Worlds, which I just got done directing, so maybe that's why it's on his mind, is that it's not a story about how this one guy, rose up and beat the aliens. It's a story about how he witnessed the fall of mankind and then the fall of the aliens. He had no effect on the story at all. And I'm watching it going, that would have been another cool movie. So there's two really neat ideas for movies, for Independence Day sequels in this movie. And they didn't go with either of them. They went with, the standard. And again, there is nothing overtly offensive in this. I mean, this isn't a movie, I think, that pisses all over the original movie, kind of like Men in Black 2, where it's so bad it almost taints the original, no matter how much you try to ignore it. It doesn't do anything that negates any of the coolness of the original. It just feels like 20 years later, this is the best follow-up we could get, and it's kind of like the Phantom Menace in that respect. You feel like they had all this time to work on it, which proves to you, as Phantom Menace's problems did, that the creators and whatnot actually weren't planning on doing this. They just kind of did, either for money or for contractual obligation or whatever. So the movie just reeks of it. Just reeks of a lack of caring and a lack of anything. And 20-year-on sequels are really hard to pull off. And I haven't really seen one that works. The only one that really works, is Rocky Balboa and Creed, wherein they had something new and different and fun to do with those characters. But even those, you can't really call 20-year-on sequels, because there were 3 sequels or 4 sequels in between those. So it wasn't like they just made Rocky and then 20 years later made Rocky Balboa. Now, so this thing that they're doing now of not just rebooting and reimagining, but this, let's do a sequel 20 years later to something that didn't need a sequel. Independence Day is Independence Day, and it's up there, man. It is that damn good. It didn't need this, and you really got to wonder why. And there's something else that bugs me, and it goes back to the cast of this, and not being likable characters or enjoyable characters. So they make a big deal out of bringing back all of these actors from the original, and kind of showing where they're at. And one of the characters they bring back, not actors, they bring back, is Bill Pullman's daughter, the little girl from the original. Now, here's the weird thing to me. The actor who played that little girl back in the original Independence Day, that was Mae Whitman, who fanboys like myself will know as the voice of Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender. She's also the voice of April O'Neil on the Nickelodeon Ninja Turtle cartoon. And so she is still acting. She had a bit part in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World a few years back, and I don't know if she's done anything else since then, but the point is, she's still acting. So they make it a point that they brought back all these actors from the original. Why not her? Why not her? Now, it's possible that they asked and she said no, but here's the disturbing feeling I can't quite shake. That the reason they didn't bring her back is because, honestly, she's put on a few pounds. She's not a svelte little cutesy-wootsy, Hollywood glamour girl. At least not from the last time I saw her. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not trying... But I get this feeling that they didn't bring her back because they wanted to cast these overly attractive 20-some-year-olds to star in this movie. And again, one of the things that made the original Independence Day work so well is that the cast was, Hollywood attractive, but they were made up of a lot of different people. I mean, who here thinks Jeff Goldblum is a sex symbol? Nobody. But he was one of the stars of that movie. He was one of the heroes. Will Smith in the original was the only one who could be considered a sex symbol, and even at that time, now this may be hard for some of you young people to wrap your heads around, but at the time that movie was made, Will Smith was not considered a sex symbol. He was considered the goofy rapper from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. This Independence Day is what made him into a sex symbol. This and that Men in Black. So the original film tried to make these characters and these feel like real people, even though they were, real people kind of skewed, you know what I mean? And again, that gave you a connection to them. And here I really feel, I get this bad feeling that Mae Whitman was not included in this movie because she doesn't fit that Hollywood glamour thing. And let me tell you, Liam Hemsworth, buddy, you did not get any of the charisma that your brother got. Okay, at least not in this movie. This is the only movie I've ever seen him in. Chris Hemsworth's got the looks and he's got the charm, as Ghostbusters kind of showed. But Liam Hemsworth, you ain't got none of it, boy. It's like watching a cardboard cutout attempt to be cool. So yeah, this movie, it should say something about this movie that I wanted to see it in the theater before it left, because I have great memories of seeing the original in the theaters, and I wish they would just re-release that to the movies. Even if they did that crappy 3D transfer, I'd totally go and watch it again, just to see it in the theaters one more time. And I realize it's been out for a while, but Ghostbusters has been out for a while as well. The only time I could see this movie was at 10 o'clock at night, and I was the only person in the theater. This is the second time this year I've been the only person in the theater. And so that should tell you something about how well this movie was received and what the general consensus of it was, and I got to agree with it. It's not a good movie. Again, it's not a terrible film, but it doesn't have anything that made the original great. It doesn't have any of the heart. It doesn't have any of the warmth. It doesn't have any of the weight. It doesn't have anything that made the original the classic that it is. So I would say skip it. And what makes it even worse is, again, it doesn't even have the dignity to suck in a way that's entertaining. You can't even go to watch this and say it's just a bad movie that you're going to enjoy. It's just bad. It lets down on all counts. And I think in this day and age, that's almost a worse sin than just outright sucking. Because I can't even say, well, it was bad, but, kind of like, this is a terrible analogy, and it may, in fact, dim some of your views on me, but, my family and I, we love the Jaws sequels. We love watching the Jaws sequels over the summer because they're so bad that they're enjoyable. Jurassic World is the same way for me. And the Jurassic Park sequels are that way. They're so bad that they're enjoyable. But this one is not. This one is just dull. And I think that's a pretty bad sin these days. So my advice to you and anyone else, and I'm pretty sure everyone's already taken this advice, go watch the original. Even on TV, just go watch the original, and you'll feel much better. Skip this one. Most people already have, so no worries about that. Well, it's late. I have another day of orientation tomorrow, but I'm really glad I got out and did this. It kind of helped me take my mind off things a little bit, and I hope you've enjoyed watching these. I'm glad to be back doing them. So until next time, which may be tomorrow night, there's at least one more movie out that I really want to see, and it's a 10 o'clocker, so I might do another of these late ones. So until that time, drive safe, and I'll see you at the movies.